recording. Okay, great.
Great. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Law School Fellowship Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We will begin at 12:02 p.m. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raised hand feature. To use the raised hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand, and to the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. All Legal Services Trust Fund Commission and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference and to please be aware of your surroundings behind you. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select enable auto transcription. Troubleshooting. Tip, for those using Zoom on a computer, when on mute, hold down the space bar to temporarily unmute. If you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. While joining, audio via computer is highly recommended. If an individual loses audio, they can call in separately using the Zoom conference number. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Elizabeth, I think we're all here. Would you like to proceed to roll call?
Yes. Campbell?
Here.
Coleman?
Here.
Rosie?
Here.
Aglagi?
Yes. And then we'll just move to public comments.
Sure. We haven't received any in advance, and I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, wonderful. And then the third agenda item is the approval of the minutes from our open session minutes from March 21st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you. And a second?
A second.
Thank you. All right, I think I'm going to turn over the bulk of this over to you, Elizabeth.
Actually, we need to do a roll call for the minutes.
Sorry, I
Okay.
keep doing this to you, don't I?
No problem. Okay, Campbell?
Here.
Coleman?
Yes.
Rosie?
Yes.
Aglagi?
Yes.
Great, motion carries.
Moving on to 2023 Law School Fellowship Grants.
Great, so I have a brief presentation and we'll share my screen now. Okay. So just a quick overview of the applications and application process. As you know, we received 38 applications from 37 organizations requesting funding for 170 fellows, totaling $1.6 million. Applicants requested funding for between 1 and 8 fellows, with 2 applicants requesting funding for 30 plus. Applicants proposed a variety of substantive work that would allow fellows the opportunity to learn and develop skills in a wide range of areas across the state in all 58 counties. And we had some applicants doing statewide work. At this time, I also wanted to note, and this is new, that as you know, we're partnering with California Change Lawyers to provide support, resources, and training opportunities to the cohort. And they just informed me yesterday that they will be able to fund some of additional fellows in the cohort. So because the request far outweighed our available resources to fund all the fellows, those that will be unfunded, Change Lawyers will seek to fund a few more fellows for the cohort. So I've reached out to all of our grantees to ask if we may share their materials if they aren't fully funded. So that's a really great opportunity to support the fellowship program. And I wanted just to publicly express my appreciation for California Change Lawyers for that.
Selena, is there something you'd want to add to this?
Oh, it's a clarifying question. With,
Yes.
and thank you for recognizing a member of the public. With California Change Lawyers, would their process have a different metrics, or is it just working in legal aid? Because I know they do a lot of diversity fellowships, so I don't know if there's.
So this, their participation with this fellowship would be, we've just asked permission from the existing applicants to share their materials. So it would be the same, kind of same metrics and review process, but they would be making their decisions independently.
Perfect. How many did you say they would fund? Oh, didn't write down the number. About.
Oh, I didn't say, I think the number's between 10 and 15.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Just a recap of our review process. We split into 2 review teams, with each review team reviewing a set. Staff reviewed all applications to ensure continuity, and the review teams met following our last committee meeting to calibrate all of our applications the first week of April. As a result of those calibration sessions, all of the applications were scored on out of a possible 100 points. With the average total score about 88.7, and then you can see that for selection criteria, that average was 78.6, and for funding preference 10. And so I think the takeaway here is that overall, all of the applications were very impressive and scored very highly. So some of the considerations in developing the 2 funding scenarios for the committee's consideration today, and as discussed in the memo, were the overall quality of the applications, the statutory priorities, that is to encourage law students to pursue a career in legal services, and a preference to fund rural, underserved, and regardless of immigration status. Also, the overwhelming support for the grant opportunity from our grantees, as well as from law schools and other stakeholders. And then very importantly, the opportunity for a majority of our applicants to fund law students at a living wage for the first time. And then because requests far exceeded our available resources, the funding scenarios that are presented contemplated funding for between 1 and 5 fellows per applicant. I also wanted to note that staff did reach out to applicants to ask whether they would or could accept an award for less than was requested. Most indicated that they would accept a smaller award, and some commented that they would absolutely do that, especially if it would mean more organizations could be funded. I also wanted to remind this committee that the commission has discretion to make awards that best accomplish the goals of the authorizing statute, even where that might mean funding a program or programs that scored lower on the rubric, and not funding a program that scored higher. So in addition to the statutory funding preferences, the committee can also prioritize funding where the applicant has already confirmed their fellows, or other criteria such as allowing more organizations to be funded. So as I mentioned, there are 2 funding scenarios that we're asking the committee to consider today. The first prioritizes top scores for the applicants. And so this is fully or partially funding applicants with a score of 90 or above, and funding partially or fully applicants with a funding preference score of 10 or above. In this scenario, we would be able to fund 77 fellows at 31 organizations. That would mean 7 organizations would not be funded. And while those organizations vary in size, 2 of them are very large organizations that serve in a wide range of substantive areas. 6 of those organizations that would not be funded under scenario 1 serve primarily urban areas, with 1 providing services statewide. Additionally, while not a funding priority, 2 of the applications focus on services for seniors, and 2 of the applications focus on services for youth. So 2 also important client groups. The second funding scenario that staff is presenting prioritizes funding to a greater number of applicants. And so this scenario would fund each of the applicants at some level. We continue to prioritize high total scores and high funding preferences, but as mentioned in the memo, it would honor the enthusiasm and support from our grantee organizations for this program. It would also help create a larger network of organizations with the ability to compensate lost school students, which we hope will increase the reach to law students considering careers in legal services. It also gives the opportunity for organizations to develop their summer programs, many of which, as I mentioned before, will be able to compensate their law students for the first time, and many for the first time at a living wage. So that we thought were larger considerations that merited funding scenario 2. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so we can have a discussion and answer any questions about the 2 funding scenarios.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that. Any thoughts from the committee?
Can I ask one question, Elizabeth? And then I'm happy to share my thoughts. Legal aid at work is on the list twice, and that wasn't one of the applications that my team reviewed. But is there a reason that they're on there twice?
Yeah, so they submitted 2 applications because their 2 fellows would, they asked for 2 different dollar amounts. And because their 2 fellows were working on slightly different timeframes, and so they didn't want it to be confusing in one application. And so we said that would be fine.
Okay. But the fellows end up getting the same amount, or they get or the amount changes because they're working less
The
weeks?
amount of compensation for the fellow is required to be $7,500. So it's just the amount of administration that changed.
Great,
Mhm.
thank you. And I don't know, Bonafshay, if you want us to share our thoughts or
I do. If we can begin the discussions with respect to the 2 options that were presented to us, would love to begin that dialogue.
well, since I'm unmuted, I'm happy to go first. You know, in going through this, and hearing the considerations that staff gave, my preference, and I think it's, I think it's overwhelming that the applications that we got and the response that we got, and the fact that we're able to fund this many people. My preference would be number 2, because I think that it does what Elizabeth said, and that is that it funds more organizations, many for the first time, able to pay their law students, and it rewards the hard work and that all the applicants did. And so, I mean, that would be my preference, is to at least be able to fund everyone, maybe not to the extent that they are asking. I know there were several, or maybe 2 groups that asked for more than 30, but it funds everyone at some level. So that would be my preference.
Very good, thank you. Novella and Vanetta, your thoughts?
Oh, I can go ahead. Good afternoon. I actually echo what Kristen said. I think that funding option number 2 is my preference. It provides both the, the breadth and depth, the breadth in terms of service delivery to different target populations, right, in different areas, and also the depth in that each program had some unique offerings. And when, it's such a pleasure to review all of the applications that we shared, but you can see whether they all had strengths and growth areas. And so I think by at least having the being awarded this time, it gives them a chance to both, reward those students who are interested in public service, as well as kind of be able to expand their service delivery and their fellowship program. So I'm in support of funding item number 2.
Wonderful, thank you, Vanetta. Novella?
Yeah, I also am in favor of funding as many organizations as possible. One question I had is just, I was curious how the funding preference categories that we scored, I think it was the last three, if
Mhm.
that had any effect on the distribution.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember thinking during the scoring process that because they were on a like smaller scale, I wasn't sure how that would pan out at the end.
So when staff developed the funding scenarios, we did look at total scores, and then we looked at top scores for funding preference, kind of in isolation. Because I think one of the things that we learned from this review process is that the funding preference scores may need to be higher to be more meaningful.
Very good. I think I'm the last to kind of weigh in on this, and I absolutely agree with my colleagues here that option number 2, for all of the reasons they stated and you, Elizabeth, underscored at the beginning, makes complete sense. So I would weigh in on option number 2.
Okay, great. So there's one more issue before the committee today that I wanted to present, and then I have a draft resolution. So I will share my screen again. So the other issue before the committee today is the issue of potentially returned or declined funds. Applicants are required to identify their fellows by June 1st, or they will be asked to return funds so that we can redistribute to another grantee. And so anticipating that a grantee may not be able to recruit by June 1st, or that they cannot accept the funds for whatever reason, staff is recommending that the committee recommend to the commission delegating authority to staff to reallocate any returned or declined funds to the applicants based on an analysis of next overall highest scoring and or next applicant with the next highest funding preference. And then here we can have a discussion on this, and then I also have draft resolution language for the committee's consideration.
And the reallocation is, I see here as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so any discussion on this matter of reallocating funds should that June 1st date not yield the usage of the funds? I have one question.
Sure.
So Elizabeth, from the conversations that staff is having with the grantees or applicants in this case, and also Selena, this is the same question going to you in the conversations that you're having. What are you starting to see? Is that June 1st doable for most of these organizations?
I see Selena's unmuted herself. I think it is. It sounds like it is, but Selena, you may have more insights.
I was mostly going to defer to you. I mean, I think that's a great question, because I think the organizations a lot of them made their offers in March. And then we also have our own fellowship. We do a racial justice fellowship, and we are holding off on our announcement until after today, because we want to see who the state bar selects. And so I think June 1st is completely reasonable. And I think organizations hopefully will let Elizabeth know before then if they have any challenges. A
Okay,
lot of students start work before then too, because
that's
of
right.
the timing of summer.
That's right. Okay, very good. Any other thoughts, ladies?
No, I was just going to add that I think a significant number of the applications that we reviewed on our team had law students already identified as
That's right.
as folks that they had hired or were going to be hiring. So that date seems doable. And so Elizabeth, it goes to the next. Staff would just use the next highest scoring.
Yeah, next highest scoring and or next highest funding preference.
Okay,
Like
who wasn't
we
already
have,
fully funded.
yeah, that
Because
is not already
some of the people are fully
right.
funded. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Vanetta, or Novella, would you
Yeah,
like to
I-
weigh in on this one?
No, I agree with what's been stated. I think that that's plenty of time, and I think that the organizations have been in anticipation, right, of a hopeful outcome, right? They've been kind of working on this, so I think June 1st would be appropriate.
And, you know, I know that staff and obviously this committee, we've done everything we can to be able to move the process along faster to get these results out to them so that they can begin those offer letters. So I believe that June 1st is very doable as well, based on everything that we've seen and what Elizabeth and Selena also shared out. Okay, so should we move on to the resolution?
And I'm sharing the PowerPoint this way in case there's any edits I can edit into on the screen. So I'll pause for a moment while folks read the resolutions.
Okay. A quick question for you, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Has this been vetted with our legal department? Has this been vetted with any of the good folks over there? Is there anything we're missing from that perspective? Because it looks good to me. And I think we'll hear from everyone else, but I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Yeah, I don't think we've missed anything.
Okay. Kristen, Vanetta, and Novella?
Just one question, this might be procedural. So after June 1st, would the organization that declined or couldn't accommodate the student, would they receive a letter, formal letter? How does notification work?
You typically we send emails.
Okay,
Yeah, letting what we're going to do is once the all of the grants have been approved, we'll send an email to those grantees letting them know the award amounts and reminding them that as a requirement they'll need to confirm their fellows by June 1st and to send us that information.
okay. Okay, confirmation. Okay, thank you.
That was my question too. Are they required to send you
Mhm.
confirmation that they have someone?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Looks good.
If we don't have any other discussion, shall we move to vote? Do I have a motion on this?
I'll move that
Thank
we
you.
adopt the recommendation
As is, okay.
as is.
And second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vanetta. Roll call, Elizabeth?
Campbell,
Yes,
Coleman,
Yes.
Rosie,
Yes,
Maglagi.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Thank you. So we thank you very much to the committee and to LAC and to all the organizations that applied. This was, as you all know, our first time administering. This is our first time administering a summer law fellow program, and we've learned a lot, which I think in our next two agenda items we'll be able to discuss a little bit more and use what we've learned to improve the process moving forward.
Wonderful. So shall we go on to 4.2?
Yes, so let me just share my screen. So the next two items are a discussion of this 2023 process, and then a little bit of just forward looking to the 2024 process. I know that you know that there even what I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of learning from this first process, what I've just put on this on the slide here, some of the things that you know I heard from you all during our review team meetings, as well as Colleen and I as staff to this program also discussed, three of the items are to consider assigning more points for the funding preferences so that it's meaningful, so potentially increasing from the 12-point max to 15 or 20, and then consider clarifying definitions for the selection criteria using examples from our committee discussions. And because we all of our discussions were so rich in terms of how the committee was using a rubric, providing more guidance in the RFP based on those discussions. So if there's additional items that I haven't captured here, we are welcome them at this time. The other thing I wanted to add, sorry, is that we will, reach out to the grantees to ask for feedback. We will also be, working with Selena and LAC to solicit feedback. As I've mentioned before, law schools are particularly interested in the fellowship program. And so we'll definitely continue to work with them as we move forward.
Novella and Kristen in that order, please.
Thanks. For the third bullet point, providing more guidance to applicants in the RFP, I thought the rubric at times the language didn't match how we were actually scoring it. I think initially that's where our sub-team ran into some calibration issues and having differences in what we thought were like 4s versus 2s. And so I think the calibration discussions for me added like more flesh to the rubric in a way that got us all on the same page.
Thank you, Novella. Kristen, please.
I agree with what Novella said first off, and what I was going to talk about was actually that point one, the first bullet point. And this actually also goes back to something Novella said in our last all group meeting about the difference between scoring someone for example, do they touch on rural? If they talk about rural, they get a 2. They actually do the work, they get a 4. And that very sort of slight difference may not actually make a difference in an overall score. So to the extent that we're going to think about changing the points values, that was one of the areas that I thought Novella made a really good point. And as we scored the applications, that was one of those things that I really saw play out in the way that Novella had mentioned it playing out, or possibly playing out. That difference between a 2 and a 4 is a substantial difference in whether you do the work or don't do the work, but in the scoring, it doesn't really reflect that. And so I think going forward, that might be something that we need to change.
And I think I agree with what my colleagues have shared. I think clarifying definitions is really useful. We talked about that in our discussion sessions. I also like what you mentioned, Elizabeth, the feedback loop, getting feedback from the applicants as well about their experiences.
So the first bullet point thus far everyone has discussed that. I'm wondering if the 15 to 20 points maximum for those four areas, was it 4 areas? My recollection is
Three areas.
3 areas,
Mhm.
is actually a correct valuation, given that those 3 areas are on the application as part of the basis of what we're looking for, right? Immigration, rural, the rest of it. So maybe the point system needs to be considered even higher than 15 to 20. And then in terms of, and this has been, obviously the issue that's been near and dear to my heart is that data collection.
Mhm.
So in the, whether it's in the RFP or, the clarification and or in clarifying definitions, it's to collect, not only speak particular specific measurable actions. And I love the idea of adding some examples here, but also in the RFP for us to collect that data, maybe at the halfway point of the summer, and then of course at the end of the summer, and have the organizations support in collecting that information for us as well. Anything else here that would be helpful? Okay. Good.
Thank you all. This is really helpful for us as staff to kind of think through what the RFP will look like for our next cycle. So I will move on to our 2024 process. So as you all know, we are quite late in the process for making funding decisions for 2023. So for 2024, we want to better align with the summer recruiting calendar for students, for schools and for organizations. Like Selena mentioned earlier, they're waiting on making their announcements to see what our announcements look like. So I think we would, to better coordinate with other stakeholders, we will likely be holding the grant application process for summer 2024 funding this fall. And then, as I mentioned, we will seek feedback from the applicants, grantees that did not apply, because we have heard that even though grantees didn't apply, they were very supportive of it. It was just due to timing that they didn't apply. So would want to learn a little bit more about that. And then again, coordinating with the law schools. So I don't know if there's, I think this kind of comes from the discussion we were just having about kind of feedback on 2023. Is there anything additional for 2024 that committee members would like us to consider?
Please, Novella.
I don't know if this goes in this discussion or the one we just ended, but I'm remembering that in our evaluation of the rubrics, we were talking about indicia from the applicant or the student material submitted to show that they would likely practice law in California. And I feel like none of our rubric categories really captured that, but it seemed like something that's important just given the statutory objective of the funding, and then just also the overall background of the justice gap and what that looks like here in California. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to integrate that value more into the process.
That's a good point, Novella. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Elizabeth, does that complete?
Yeah, this is all really helpful. And if there are additional thoughts from the committee, you can send them directly to me, and we will work them into the process for our next cycle. Thank you very much.
Before we adjourn, this is the last time that this committee will be together. I want to just thank each of you, the deliberateness, the the heart. I always go to the heart. Obviously, the intention and passion behind the work that we get to do. It was such a delight and honor to work with you. I'll say first three ladies, but then there's so many other ladies on this screen, and no wonder that there are all these ladies, and I know this is being recorded on this mission. So thank you so much for all of your hard work and your time, and especially the staff. You made this seamless. You made this look so easy, and we know that that's a sign of mastery. So you've really thank you for setting this in motion as our first. And Selena and all of those that are on the ground working through interacting with all of the organizations. It's exciting to see, especially all of those, you know, we've been there. We were law students. We weren't getting paid. And to be able to have this be a possibility, it's exciting, it's rewarding. So thank you all.
And if I can chime in, Bonachet, I think that this is the first time that COAF and the Legal Services Trust Fund have worked together on a project like this. And so on behalf of COAF, and Novella can certainly chime in as well, we're just, you know, thrilled to have been invited to participate and to see the work that you all are doing all the time, and to be able to be a part of it. I think really, I mean, it's something that Novella and I can bring back to COAF and really talk about the great work that's being done by, you know, Legal Services Trust Fund, but by the State Bar, and the ways that we were able to really to impact that justice gap that Novella was speaking of. So thank you for letting us be a part of this. And for, of course, the staff who, I don't know how they do all the work that they do and make it look so easy. So thank you all. And thank you, Bonachet, for being so welcoming to Novella and I.
Of course, this is a conversation that started 4 years ago or 3 years ago, when we began this. Let's bring both sides of the Office of Access and Inclusion together on the great work that we get to do. So I'm really happy that this is turned out so well, and I know there's going to be many more intersections to come.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could just share, I mean, it's just such a pleasure to be involved with the committee, learning more about the legal industry, right? And I think that the importance of collaboration and all the ways that we come together to promote public service. So thank you for that to staff and colleagues.
Thank you. All right. So, I mean, listen, efficiency at its best. 40 minutes, we're complete. Another hour and 20 minutes in your day is reverted back to each of you. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone.
Adjourned.